I was thinking today about my time in Rome and how I got to Rome, and I decided that that would be a good short story to share. Um, so, when I was in college, the University of Mary, which is where I went, had a very awesome study abroad program in Rome. And I had no intention or desire whatsoever to study abroad in Rome. That was not part of my plans. I never wanted to study abroad. I did not like traveling, right? And I did a summer of mission work in North Dakota, and I was going from parish to parish, and various people, like in various parishes, probably every parish that I went to, would be like, "Hey, Erin, when are you going to Rome?" And I'd be like, "What? I'm not going to Rome." And they'd be like, "Really? What are you gonna do there?" And I'd be like I said, "I'm really not going to Rome. I have no idea what you're talking about." And they'd be like, "Oh, I thought you were going to Rome." And this happened several times where they'd be like, "So what are you gonna do in Rome?" And I'd be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And they'd be like, "Huh, I really thought you were going to Rome." Happened everywhere, okay? Like literally every parish that I went to, someone was like, "What are you gonna do in Rome?" And I was like, "No, there is no Rome, not for me." And it happened all summer. And then at my last location, I was with my missionary team, and a priest approached me and he goes, "Erin, what are you going to do in Rome?" And I was like, "I'm not going to Rome." And he was like, "Are you sure? You should really pray about that." And I was like, "Gosh darn it." And then my best friend, one of my best friends, texted me and she was like, "Hey, Erin, have you prayed about going to Rome?" And I was like, "Gosh darn it." Now she said it, and she always knows God's will for my life. It's crazy. So, because she, every time that I needed to, pray about something important, she would be like, "Hey, you should pray about this thing." And I'd be like, "No." And then I'd be like, "Gosh darn it, she was right. I really should pray about that thing." Happens all the time with this particular friend, right? So, anyway, I did not want to go to Rome. But I prayed about it that week and I was like, shoot darn, I should probably apply. I really don't want to go to Rome. I'll apply, but there's no way I'm going to Rome. They're not going to accept me. My GPA is a 3.49, and anything below a 3.5, they do not accept, right? So they don't even look at it. Usually they just throw away the applications, right? And so this is my mindset. I apply for Rome, thinking this whole semester is already accepted. The roster is full. Nobody ever drops out of this program. Okay? So I apply and I'm like, well, I'm done with that. Done God's will. He wants me to try. I tried. Probably won't get it, right? So that's where it stands. Nothing happens for a long time. And 6 people drop out of the Rome program. And on the feast day of St. Jude, the last one drops out of the Rome program. And as they're leaving the Rome director, person's office, they were like, "Hey, is Erin still in the running?" And she was like, "Oh, I can't tell you that." And she goes, "Well, you should really offer my spot to her." And so I get an email later that day that says, "If you would like to go to Rome still, please come to my office tomorrow." So I go to her office the next day and she goes, "Well, you want to go to Rome?" And I was like, yeah. And she goes, "Great, here's the paperwork, fill it out, bring it back to me whenever you can, as soon as possible." Because they weren't going to accept any more applicants. They were done accepting applicants a week ago, but something happened with the visas and they hadn't sent it in yet. So there was an extra week of time, and I got accepted pretty much on the last day that they could accept anyone. And so I filled out the paperwork that it took others a lot more time to do. I did it in a day, and I brought it back in. Didn't have the money to go to Rome, okay? Wasn't planning on going to Rome. And they, now I'm going to Rome, okay? And as I'm preparing to go to Rome, I'm making different payments, paying things off as I'm going, and the last payment is due, and I don't have the money. It's the last day that this payment can be paid. And I was like, well, shoot darn, I don't have the money. It's kind of a bummer that I wasted all this other money preparing to go to Rome. And it was something like $50 or $500 or something, something that's really not significant, but for me, I just didn't have the money. So later that day, basically I got an inheritance from my grandpa that paid off the last amount of money that I needed in order to go to this Rome program. And my grandpa was a very generous man, but generous in ways that did not affect me. So like, he would have never given me money to go to Rome. So like, it was a miracle that like this last bit of money came from him. Not that he was alive to give it to me, but like, he still gave it to me. Hopefully that's not too sad to say. And then, so I'm gonna go to Rome. I have the tickets, I have everything, like, but because I was accepted so late, I don't know where I'm going in Rome. So like, I don't have an address, I don't have phone numbers, I don't have anything like that, right? All I know is I'm just gonna travel with my group, and we're all gonna fly together, and it's gonna be great, and we're gonna get to Rome together, and then I'm gonna go to wherever they're staying. And that's all. I'm like, yeah, I'll just follow the group once I get there. However, I fly from a different first airport. I fly from Sioux Falls, and my group flies from Bismarck, okay? And I was like, that's okay, we'll meet in Minneapolis, where the next flight takes off from. I make the flight from Minneapolis, we all fly to Paris together, okay? Then we get to Paris, and I am like, I don't have a boarding pass for my last flight to Rome. So I am like I am trying to like pull it open on like people's like tablets, phones, like whatever we could. And I just can't get my boarding pass to pull up. And meanwhile, like, we're like 25 people, and the plane is waiting for us because we are such a large group that they were not going to take off until we got there because they realized we're all coming from the same flight and our flight was late. So they're waiting for us. And when we get, and we're walking, we're like running through the Paris airport to make this flight. And they're like, oh, that's the group, go, 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 go. And they're like pushing us through all the things. And then we get to like one last security check, and they're like, where's your boarding pass? And I was like, I don't have one. And they were like, well, go get one. And I was like, okay. So I go into this line, this like kiosk thing where they can print off boarding passes. And by the time I get to the front of this line, the plane is gone. Like, the plane is in the air. My class is gone, okay? So I'm like, well, shoot, darn, missed that flight. What am I gonna do now? And so I'm like going to different desks, and they're like telling me, hey, go to this desk where they can help you out. But this is the Paris airport, and like sometimes, a couple times, they sent me to desks that didn't even exist. So they'd be like, oh yeah, go this way and that way, and then go to this person at this desk, and like, there wasn't a desk there, so there was no person to like talk to. So eventually I get to someone who's like, oh yeah, go through customs, and then outside of customs, like, you have to go through security too. Like, you're gonna find another place where they can print you a new ticket. And so I go to this new ticket place. Luckily, this one existed, okay? And they give me a new ticket, and so then I have to go, but it wasn't a boarding pass, right? And I have to go through security to get back, like, into the airport. And I don't have a boarding pass, and I've been trying to get a boarding pass for the last like 2 hours and still can't get a boarding pass, okay? And so I'm like, I don't know how to get a boarding pass. I've tried everything, right? So I'm like, well, this ticket kind of looks like a boarding pass, so I'm just gonna go to security and see what happens. So I go to security, and they were like, huh, looks like a boarding pass, not scanning like a boarding pass. Go through anyway. So they let me through security without a boarding pass, right? And then I find the gate, and I'm waiting for my plane, and I'm like, well, I should probably find a boarding pass before I try to get on this plane, because they're probably not gonna let me on without a boarding pass. So I finally find a help desk, and the lady's like, oh yes, I can print a boarding pass for you right here. She prints off a boarding pass. By the way, like, all of this is happening in broken English / French, and like half the time, like, I have no idea what's going on, and it's like blah 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 blah, yes, do this, blah 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 blah, right? So like like, this has been a nightmare for me. And so I finally have a boarding pass. I meet a nun in the airport. She shares like half of her sandwich with me and some cheese. She realized that as I was trying to eat the cheese, that I was trying to eat it out of charity, and I really did not like the cheese. And she was like, you don't have to eat the cheese. And I was like, oh, thank God, because this cheese is awful. It's probably really good cheese, but like for my American taste, it was really gross. And so anyway, I get on this plane. I sit next to a lady who is praying something on her rosary in a different language. And I pull out my rosary and I'm like, let's pray a Divine Mercy Chaplet together. And she is praying, I don't know what she's praying, but it's not the Divine Mercy Chaplet on her rosary. So like, and I'm like, okay, I pray a decade, you pray a decade. And like, I'll pray the first half, you pray the second half. And like, this is all like in my English and her whatever language, right? And so we have this kind of conversation, but clearly it was not understood. Because like, I pray half of my prayer, and then she gets to her side and she's praying something much, much longer than a Divine Mercy Chaplet. She was probably praying the rosary like a normal person, okay? So anyway, that was like the weirdest rosary that I've ever prayed with somebody, because like, I don't even know if we were praying the same prayers. And she would like look at me every once in a while like, what are you praying? So anyway, that's just a funny like side story. So we get on to the airplane, fly to Rome, and I land. And I'm like, well, don't know where I'm going or how I'm gonna get there. But what I do know is that like, I need my suitcase, one thing at a time. So I go to the place where you get your suitcase, and my suitcase is not there. So I went to the suitcase luggage help desk, and I was like, hey, where's my luggage? And they were like, let's look. Your luggage is in Paris. I was like, oh. And they were like, well, we can send it to you tomorrow. Where would you like it to go? And I was like, that is a great question. So I pull out my paperwork, and I was like, well, this is all in Italian, so I don't know what it's saying, but like, there's an Italian address in the middle of it. So like, I'm gonna say, let's go to this address, right? I have no idea if this is the right address, but like, it's all I got. So they were like, well, let's call and make sure it's a residential thing. And they're like, well, it's like a residential tourist type thing. Like, you sure you want it to go there? And I was like, yep, it's all I got. Let's do it. Send it there. So they're like, all right, we'll send our luggage there tomorrow. It'll be there tomorrow, right? So then I was like, all right, step one complete, luggage not with me. Okay, step two, get to this address that my luggage is now going to, because it's my best guess for where any of my other classmates are. So I get outside, go outside of the airport, and I've been warned about fake taxis, and I think about 5 fake taxi guys approach me, and I was like, no, I'm gonna find a real taxi. And I get in a taxi with a real taxi guy, okay? And I was like, take me to this address in this middle of this paperwork. I don't know where it's at, but I need to go there. And we like discussed a price. He like agreed to the price that I was like, this is what I have to pay you. And he was like, okay, great. So then we're in this taxi, and this is like the worst driver I have ever been with in my life, okay? Like, he is all over the road, he's going super fast, he's like weaving through traffic, but not only that, like, he's using a paper map this whole time, so he's like weaving through traffic, and then he pulls up the paper map, and then he puts it down and goes, and he's going, okay? And he does not speak a lick of English. So, and I'm in the front seat, and I haven't slept for over 24 hours, and I'm terrified. First of all, for his driving. Second of all, I don't know where I'm going. And third of all, like, at some point, he like gets out of the car and opens up a gate, and I'm like, this is the mafia. I have chosen a mafia man to be my taxi driver. I'm about to die, like, this is the end. I don't know where I'm going, but like, it's not good, right? And we keep driving for 20 minutes after he manually opens up a gate. And I'm like, clearly this is mafia land, okay? So we keep driving, and eventually we get to this address. He did take me to the address, okay? And he gets out of the car, and he was like, well, are you gonna go inside? Kind of like all he could say in English was, it's okay, because I was crying in his front seat, and I was like, it's not okay, I don't know where I'm going, you're the mafia, like, this is like the worst worst day ever, right? And so anyway, we get to the place and he's like, go inside. And I was like, I don't know how to go inside. There's a gate, like, but all I see is the University of Mary sign, right? There is a University of Mary sign on the gate. I was like, this is clearly where I need to be. Even if my classmates don't arrive till Monday, like, maybe I can just sleep outside of the gate until Monday, right? Luckily, that's not what happened. So, like, the guy gets out of the car, he pushes the button on the wall, and, like, talks to the people inside, and they open up the gate, okay? And the first thing I see is, like, this building, and inside of the building are my classmates. They are about to go to dinner, right? And they were like, Erin, you're here, you made it. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, well, where's your suitcase? We'll bring it downstairs to your room for you. And I was like, it's in Paris. It's not here. And they were like, oh, okay, well, like, we've got some, like, extra clothing. Like, you can borrow some stuff. You can take a shower if you want. Like, we'll let you freshen up before you, like, get on, like, have dinner with us. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great, thanks. And I was so happy to see English speakers. And that night, I had a nightmare, and it was in French. And I'm sure it wasn't real French, but it was my mind's version of French, and I had no idea what was going on, just like my day. And anyway, so that was how I got to Rome. And I learned how to trust in the Lord that day because, like, everything went wrong that could go wrong in my adventure to getting to Rome. But, like, everything was just fine. Like, it was all God's will, and it worked out fine. And, like, after that day, I was no longer afraid of traveling, which I was terrified of before. And I was, like, it became a day of, like, learning how to surrender to God, which is so good for me. Good for everyone, really. Trust in the Lord. He's got a better plan than you think, than your plan is either. Like, and that was like the rest of my time in Rome was like all the time, everything would go wrong, but like it always ended up better than what I had originally planned. Yeah. So anyway, God's will is better, and it's fantastic. Anyway, have a good night. God bless. Ciao.